Who are the sapiosexual? With this term, we indicate people who are sexually attracted by people with a very high level of intelligence and culture. So a very high intelligence or culture are the criteria for sapiosexuals to choose a partner, which can be a sexual partner just for one night or a partner on the long term. But what are the characteristics of a sapiosexual? Which is the connection between sapiosexuality and sacred sexuality? And above all, how can I understand if I am a sapiosexual?
Hi, I am Maya Vassallo di Florio. In this space, I answer the most common questions about personal blooming and empowerment. Touching philosophical, spiritual, cultural, and social themes, I support you in making the difference in the world. I'm here to guide you blooming in the marvelous creature you are, one petal at a time.
Welcome to this new episode of Aphrodisia. I know it's a long time. We missed this appointment, and I'm really happy to have come back. I've been really busy lately, writing my new Italian book, finding a way to translate my book about Aphrodite and sacred sexuality into English. So lots of things going on in the Italian community for me, and for the activities of Aphrodite's temple, the goddess temple of Rome. But I'm back today with a very magnetic, fascinating, charming, and stimulating theme, which is very interesting, and it was born from Raffaella's question. Raffaella wrote me this message. Maya, following the red thread of passion, I wanted to ask you if sexuality can express also through sapiosexuality. What is it? Can it be sacred? And in what way? Thanks a lot. Well, it's a very hot theme, so compliments on you, Raffaella, for having asked such a clever and intriguing question. Also because the majority of people have no idea what a sapiosexual is. So I'm very happy today to talk about this very interesting theme, which has a lot in common with Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, which I teach, and which is based on sacred sexuality, which is fundamental for spiritual evolution and for spiritual and personal growth. Sacred sexuality, as I teach it, is a way for enlightenment. If you're new here and you've never heard about sacred sexuality, in the description of this video, I will put the link to listen to the previous episodes about sacred sexuality. And speaking about today's theme, what is sapiosexuality? Let's start analyzing the word, which derives from Latin sapiens, which means the person with a high level of intelligence, cultivated, wise, a person who knows, and word sexual, which of course we know what it means. So sapiosexual is a person who feels attracted by the intelligence, by the culture, by the vivaciousness of the brain, by the sparkling conversation of another person. And this is a fundamental discriminant criteria for choosing a partner, which can be a long-term partner, but also a short-term partner, just a lover for one night. So if a person, even just for one night, for making love for only one night, needs to be excited by a person's intelligence or culture, it means that person is a sapiosexual. It means intelligence and culture are very strong values, are core values for that person that condition the choice of a partner, even sexually, even just for one night stand. Where does this term sapiosexual come from? This word was introduced in the Urban Dictionary in the 2012, and it started being used definitely in the 2014, when a notes and well-known dating app, an app for organizing meetings between people whose name is OkCupid, started using it, and it described it as a sexual orientation. In a while, I'm going to explain you why it's not exactly a sexual orientation. But let's talk a little bit more about the studies and the story of sapiosexuality. The studies about sapiosexuality started in 2017, and they were started to see if really people who defined themselves as sapiosexuals or that were described as sapiosexual were really attracted by people with a high level of intelligence, with an IQ superior to the average. The researches were taken by the professor Gillian O'Giniak, I hope to pronounce it well, from the University of Western Australia. In these researches, the professor started giving a questionnaire and a psychometric analysis to 383 people of any gender, so men, women, any gender. So each one of them, they completed this questionnaire, and it came out that indeed people who defined themselves sapiosexual or that fell into the parameters of a sapiosexual were really attracted by other people with a very high IQ, superior to the average. I'm talking about an IQ of 120, so superior to the average, which is between 95 and 110. But we're not talking yet about geniuses whose IQ is 135. Why? Because they declared in the questionnaire that they preferred a superior IQ, but not too high, otherwise they would feel inadequate. They would feel stupid compared to geniuses. So they would prefer people who they considered stimulating on an intellectual and cultural level. So why did I say before it's not exactly a sexual orientation? Because in the big macro area of sapiosexuals, there can be any kind of people with any kind of sexual orientation. So heterosexuals, homosexuals, bisexuals, pansexuals. So we can have a woman who is attracted by a man with a very high level of IQ. So we will have an heterosapiosexual woman. Or we can have a woman who is attracted sexually by another woman with a very high level of IQ. So we will have an homosexual, sapiosexual woman, and so on. Another interesting thing that emerged from this query, this research, was that also a lot of men were sapiosexuals. So it's not just something that women declare to be, but also many men are sexually attracted by women with a very high level of intelligence and culture. And this is a fundamental criteria in the choice of partners, not only on long term, but also on medium term and very brief term, also just for one night. Now, let's tap into the second part of Raffaella's question. She asked, can sapiosexuality have a secret meaning, a secret aspect? And if yes, in which way? My answer is absolutely yes, and I'm going to explain you why in a moment. As you know, we have different kinds of intelligence. So with regards to sapiosexuality, a person could be attracted by a person with a high level of worldly intelligence, with a high level of ability in talking, with a very high level of dialectic abilities. So a person could be attracted by philosophers, for example, by poets, writers, people of literature. Other people could be attracted by mathematicians. Other people could be attracted by musicians. So people with a very high level of musical intelligence. Other people could be attracted by dancers. So people with a very high level of physical and bodily intelligence, and so on, according to the various kinds of intelligence that are in the world. The same we can say about spiritual intelligence. So there are people who are attracted by other people with a very high level of spiritual intelligence and or with a very expanded knowledge about spirituality. Personally, I think I am a sapiosexual who is very attracted, and this is true since I was a little girl, by people with a very high level of intelligence and ability in talking. I like when people talk very elegantly with a very wide vocabulary, people who choose with care every single word, people who talk aphroditically, who talk poetically, who pick the words, putting care, even just in writing a message on the mobile phone. So not short messaging, but taking really care, being really present in the moment and having respect for the language, for the communication. And here I want to do a disclaimer. I'm not English mother tongue, I'm Italian mother tongue. People say I speak English quite well, but my vocabulary in English is not as wide. So when I talk about elegant talking, aphroditical talking, I speak in Italian, in which my vocabulary is much wider, and I like to use even naive words or vintage words or expressions. And I like people that know very, very ancient expressions that out of the blue they talk in Latin. So it's something I like. It's my peculiarity. So as a sapiosexual, I'm really fascinated by people who put care in the language, but also people with a very high level of emotional intelligence. So I'm attracted by empathic people, people with a very high ability in doing mediation. And ça va sans dire, I choose my husband because I'm also fascinated by people who have a very expanded and deep spiritual knowledge. So not just the knowledge in the mind, but wisdom in the body, spiritual wisdom of the body and the mind. My husband, he's a very sensual man, so he has a very high level of intelligence, of body intelligence, but it is also very empathic, so a very high level of emotional intelligence. He is great in mediation. He anticipates the needs of other people. He's very caring. He is not as much interested as I am in literature or philosophy. On the other hand, he has a very high level of mathematical intelligence, on the opposite of me. I'm overwhelmed by the great capacity he has of analyzing everything, every space, every place, every people, just snapping the fingers. He just has a glance and he can tell you everything about that person, everything about that place. He can read in depth a person or a place or a situation, and he can read every detail, putting every detail into relationship so fast and so deeply and so carefully that he really is one of the most intelligent people and clever people I've ever known. He has a great capacity of problem solving also, and great practicity. But of course, what unites us, what united us both on the short term when we went to bed for the first time and on the long term, is our spiritual intelligence. Spirituality for us is a great value. He was born in a family where his mother was a witch and an esoterist, and she had studied thousands of books and practiced for 30 years. So he has grown up since he was 5, meditating, doing rituals, and using the art of magic since he was very little. So for sure, this was determining in my choosing him as a life partner. Moreover, both his mother and his father grown him up and educated him Gilanically, in a Gilanic way, which means on gender equality. So he was grown up with the knowledge that men and women have the same rights and they can do the same things. And this was very, very important to me. as Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality is also a matriarchal and feminist spirituality. Why am I telling you all this? Because I think that being a sapiosexual and the field in which our sapiosexuality expands and expresses depends on the values we absorb from our family. It's not a general intelligence, like a mist of intelligence. It's something very peculiar by which we are attracted, and it depends on the values that our parents gave us. It depends on the parenting models we grew up with. For example, I have a very artistic mother. She's very cultivated, very elegant. She's a philosopher, a woman of culture in the field of literature. So she's more of an artistic soul, a poetic soul. On the contrary, my father, he's very practical. He's one of the most clever men on the mathematics and logic field. He has a great capacity of problem solving, very, very practical. So I deduced these values from my family. And that's why I'm attracted by those kind of people that can have both philosophical intelligence, let's say so, or a mathematic intelligence, a logic intelligence. So I desumed the values from my families, and growing up, I developed my personal values that sometimes can be different also from my family's. Putting all these together, personal values and family values, we can know by which persons we can be attracted. So without giving any judgment, because I think that values and what we like, things or people by which we are attracted, cannot be discussed. Everyone has the right of like what he or she likes. So without any judgment, I personally am not attracted at all by people who don't put care into the writing, into the talking. I'm not attracted by people who don't talk beautifully. I'm not attracted by people who live life superficially and feelings superficially. I'm not attracted by people who consider sexuality just as an exercise of the hips. And here I can connect with the theme of sacred sexuality, which is part of the question that Raphael asked. So I could say that being profound, that the depth, being deep, is the trait d'union between sapiosexuality and sacred sexuality. Both of them cannot exist where there is superficiality. They need being profound. They need to go deep. So now you could ask me, Maya, okay, so how can I understand if I am a sapiosexual? You are probably a sapiosexual if you feel and know that the physical attraction comes after the mental attraction. So it's more of a thing of magnetism, of charm. If you're a sapiosexual, you will probably notice not only the content of the message of a person, but also the way the person expresses. So the depth of the message, but also the shape of the message, the care that the person puts into the communication. So the ways that the person chooses to connect with you can result up in a mix of sexiness, and the person can become very magnetic to you. If you're a sapiosexual, you will probably be attracted by people who puts care in the choice of the words, who talks elegantly. It's about knowing that it's also a matter of depth and care that the person puts into the communication, because the person, a sapiosexual, knows that communication is a gift. In fact, the word, the little part muni in communication means in Latin, gift. So communication is a reciprocal gift. A sapiosexual connects with another person if there is depth and nourishment. And I'm not talking about lessons, boring lessons, or people talking to give you lessons, or for men, the mansplaining, the man who explained to women the things. It's not a dynamic of power over here. It's a matter of care, which has nothing to do with power over. You probably are a sapiosexual if a person that you initially didn't notice physically, he or she starts talking and wow, you're so fascinated by that person. You're like really attracted by her or him like a magnet. And you start finding that person fascinating, charming. Vice versa, you understand you are a sapiosexual if you are attracted sexually by someone, physically by someone, but as soon as she starts talking, your attraction falls down and breaks on the floor terribly because you feel there is no match on an intellectual or cultural level. So if all these sounds familiar to you, you are very likely a sapiosexual. And this, of course, has a lot to do with sacred sexuality, as I said, also because it involves the sphere of making love. Superficiality is something the sapiosexual or the person who practices sacred sexuality don't want to mess up with. No superficiality. So you can understand if you're a sapiosexual and or a person who practices sacred sexuality, that a person is not just a person that has sex, but a person that makes love. Even before the act of making love, even before the sexual intercourse, you can understand it by the caresses, by the messages, by the sensuous talking. I'm so excited by a person who talks sexy. Really, it's like making love. Sometimes using the right words can really turn you on. You can guess if a person is good in making love, if he or she will be a good partner by the way she or he caresses you, kisses you, courts you. You will understand by all these if that person will be 100% there with you when making love and will not use your body, but will be in relationship with you, with all the body, mind, and soul. So you will be together interweaving and mixing with body, mind, and soul. And heart, of course. Even if it's just for one night, I repeat it, it's about making love with all the being. It's about being there, connecting and communicating, because sex is a communication on a sacred level. And this can make the difference. It means giving a profound meaning to the act of making love, even if it will not be developed into having a relationship. It's okay. Even if it's just for one night, you will love that person and you will be loved by the person with all the soul. If you feel this, you're not just a sapiosexual, you're also a spirit sexual, which is a term I just created to indicate the idea of considering sex something that unites two people on a mental level, on a heart level, on a bodily level, on a soul level, on a spiritual level, which is so great, so beautiful, and which is the core of Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, which I teach, and on which my courses and trainings are based. So if you want to know more about sacred sexuality and Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, you can find in the links below the access to my website, which will be renewed shortly. But in the meanwhile, go and have a look if you want to start immersing into Aphroditic sacred sexuality. Well, I hope this episode of Aphrodisia was very useful to you. As always, the best way to support this free project, in which I always give free coaching sessions and precious free contents for you. The best way to support it, as I said, is to share this episode and all the episodes you like with all the people out there who need to know there is a different way, an Aphroditic and juicy way of living life, it is true, it's not utopic. We are building it. There is a temple. I'm in the temple of the great goddess here in Rome, and we are building this Aphroditic world. And we are building here this Aphroditic world and spreading Aphroditic values into the earth, into the whole planet. Another way to support Aphrodisia is to leave a feedback. If you're listening to the podcast, it's just a few seconds. You can click on the 5 stars. Or otherwise, if you're listening from YouTube, you can write down under this video your feedback, and it will be my pleasure to answer you personally. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube and podcast channel and click on the bell to receive a notification anytime that a new episode is born. Well, I thank you for being here, and meet you on next episode next Monday. Aphroditic sensual blessings to you.